Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just sit and give my lecture, no point. So today I will talk about key environmental issues that we find in Sri Lanka. If you look at environmental protection in Sri Lanka, the need for environmental safeguards is enshrined in the constitution. If you look at the constitution of Sri Lanka, you will see that Article 27 in the constitution says that the state shall protect, preserve and improve the environment for the benefit of the community. Okay, so that shows the responsibility of the government or the state. Then if you look at Article 28F of the Constitution, it says that the exercise and enjoyment of rights and freedoms is inseparable from the performance of duties and obligations. And accordingly, it is the duty of every person in Sri Lanka to protect nature and conserve its riches. So Article 28F gives the responsibility of who? Whom are they talking about in Article 28? Article 27 talks about the state or the government, and 28 is talking about who? Huh? Can't hear. Huh? Yes, that's right. Yes, all the people in everybody in Sri Lanka. So all of us have a duty to protect the environment. So that is what this Article 28F states, right? So it's a very important thing because it says Sri Lankans are very good at always talking about their rights and freedoms. Everybody is talking about this is my right, that is my right, but nobody talks about what they are supposed to, their responsibilities. Even professionals, you can see, they are always talking about give me a pay rise, government has to do this for me, but they never talk about what they are supposed to do, right? So as professionals also, not only in terms of environment, in terms of anybody's behavior as professionals, we have to always think about our duties and performance of duties and obligations also. So this Article 28F is saying a very important thing to all people of Sri Lanka, that is, it is everybody's duty to protect the environment, right? Because people are very good at blaming the government for everything. If you see some whole lot of garbage on the street, we are always saying, oh, the CMC doesn't come and collect the dirt, but they don't think about what people have to do. You know, if you look at Sri Lankas, they have a very bad, very bad civic sense. That is, they don't think. If you see people walking on the street, they'll just drop pieces of paper all over the road and go. They don't even think twice about it. Why is that? Because they don't think about their obligations and their duties. You just drop the thing and you expect someone else to pick it up, right? So, that is just one example. But here we are talking about protection of the environment, and that it is the duty of everybody in Sri Lanka to protect the environment, not only the government, right? So if you look at the laws in Sri Lanka, if you look at environmental protection, there are a whole number of laws that relate to the environment. If you actually count, more than about 100, which have some kind of provision on environmental protection and management. Not that all these laws are on environmental protection, but they have some kind of provision on environmental protection. So if you look at some of the earliest environmental legislation, it came in the last century during the time of the British. If you like to look at the really old laws like forestry and protection of high elevation, they came about more than 100 years ago, right? But if you look at what is the law that deals exclusively with environmental protection and management, that is the National Environmental Act of 47 of 1980. So the law that is dealing exclusively with environmental protection came in 1980. That is the National Environmental Act. Now these are the different agencies that deal with environmental issues. You have the Coast Conservation Department, Marine Pollution Prevention, now they have changed their name to Marine Environmental Protection Authority, MIPA. Then you have the Sustainable Energy Authority, you have the Central Environmental Authority, you have the Forest Department, Department of Wildlife Conservation. Then you also have in the Northwestern Province a separate environmental authority for environmental protection. So if you look at environment, we can actually divide the environment into what we call green and brown issues, right? What are these green issues? If you talk about environment, everyone thinks that environment is tree planting, biodiversity, forestry, wildlife. Those are what we call green issues, right? But there is much more to environment than only green issues. I mean, green issues are a very big part of environment. But there are also what we call brown issues. For example, water pollution, air pollution, industrial pollution control. All those are what we call brown issues. Then if you look at forestry and wildlife conservation, now these are what we call green issues. The Forest Department and Department of Wildlife Conservation controls more than 1.9 million hectares between them. So you can see the amount of land that is being controlled by the Forest Department and the Wildlife Department. So 1.9 million hectares comes under their responsibility. So the Forest Department's main functions consist of conserving forests as well as biological diversity. Then the Department of Wildlife Conservation's function is to protect the indigenous fauna and flora in Sri Lanka. Then also the Department of Wildlife Conservation, they establish national reserves and sanctuaries as protected areas. So these are the functions of the Forest Department and the Wildlife Department. Then if you look at the Central Environmental Authority, which is the National Agency for Environmental Protection, it was set up in 1981 after the National Environmental Act number 47 of 1980 was passed. So 1980 the act was passed, and in 1981 the Central Environmental Authority was set up. So at the beginning the CEA was only a coordinating and policy making body, and it had no regulatory authority as such. So in 1988 there were certain amendments made to the act which transformed the CEA into what we call a regulatory agency with regulatory powers. So if you look at the major environmental issues in Sri Lanka, some of the issues are of course municipal solid waste management, that is waste management mostly in urban areas. Then you have problem of coastal erosion, especially in the southwestern coast. Then you have water pollution. Water pollution is actually mainly from sewerage rather than from industrial pollution, but it is there, water pollution. Then you have air pollution, which comes mainly from vehicles. Then hazardous waste management, that is waste coming from industries, hospitals, etc. Then you have problems with siting of industries. You know, industries are put in the wrong place, and that causes a problem. Then you also have the human-elephant conflict, soil erosion, which is one of the major problems in Sri Lanka, and of course deforestation. So if you look at municipal solid waste management is a major issue in urban areas, right? So even in cities where collection is done properly, final disposal is a problem. For example, if you look at Colombo, you can see that the waste is being collected quite regularly, but when it goes to finally where are you going to dispose it, there is a problem because we don't have proper waste disposal sites in Sri Lanka, right? So you can see, you must have heard about the Meetotamulla waste dump some time back. where the waste dump collapsed and people were killed, etc. Right? So now they have stopped dumping in Mitaramula and now they are dumping in Muthurajavela. So there's a very big issue that you can't find proper dumping sites in Sri Lanka for waste. So that's a major issue. So in Colombo, final disposal of waste is causing a major social and political issue. And also all the existing disposal sites are what we call dumps. Rather than now, if you look at other countries, for example, more developed countries like if you look at in this region like Singapore, or Japan, or Korea, they don't just go and dump the waste in some location. They have what are called sanitary landfill sites, right? Have you heard about sanitary landfill sites? What is a sanitary landfill site? Has anybody seen one or heard about one? What is it? Huh? Pugoda. Pugoda they have one. Nuwara, that's right, yes. In Nuwara there is one, no? Sanitary landfill site, yes. But that is, I don't know whether it's working. Have you seen it? You have seen. If they are doing it properly. Now, those days they did it okay, no? Yes. So, there is another one in close to Colombo in Dompe.
Yeah, Dompe.
Yeah, Pugoda is Dompe, no? Right. Yeah, Dompe there is a sanitary. Have you seen it? Yeah. That is a properly done sanitary landfill site. So sanitary landfill site is where actually you put proper liners at the bottom. You put plastic liners at the bottom. Then there is a way how you can collect the methane gas that comes out of the waste. So in a sanitary landfill site, then also the waste water, there is some leachate that comes out of a waste dump. There will be provisions to treat that wastewater also, right? So that is what you call a sanitary landfill site. That is the pollutants won't go into the groundwater or the soil or anything like that because there are impermeable liners at the bottom with plastic. Plastic. So now that is a sanitary landfill site. Now in Sri Lanka you hardly ever see except in Dompe and to some extent in Nuwara. Those are the only two sanitary landfill sites so far that we have. All the other sites that you dispose waste are just dumps. They just go and throw it on the ground and that's it. And all the pollutants go into the groundwater and the soil, etc. Right? So those are dumps. Yeah.
I don't understand how it works at sanitary landfill site. How it works?
How it works? How it works in the sense that now they put an impermeable plastic liner at I think it high density polyethylene or something like that. It's impermeable. Nothing can go through it, right? So now normally when you dump waste on the ground, there are pollutants now. There are chemicals, lot of pollutants. But they will normally if there is no liner, all those pollutants will go into the soil and the groundwater. So the groundwater and the soil gets polluted, right? Here in a sanitary landfill site, when you put that liner, that water and the pollutants won't go down into the groundwater and the soil. And in a sanitary landfill, there is a way of collecting that leachate, the water that, when you put a waste, there is water, when there's rain or something, there will be water that is coming out which has pollutants dissolved in it, no? So in a sanitary landfill site, they have provisions to collect that leachate from all around the site. They take that leachate and then they treat it in a treatment plant. So that is another thing, right? Then the third thing is, main thing is, always in waste dumps, where you dump municipal waste, there will be methane coming out. You know that there's methane coming out from waste dumps, right? That methane also they collect or they put pipelines so that the methane is let out into the air. So basically that is a sanitary landfill site.
So there is no segregation to be?
No, not necessarily to have segregation, no. Sanitary landfill means you can put anything, but you have to have those things, impermeable liner, gas collection and leachate treatment. Those three have to be there in a sanitary landfill site. So now those are not there. No, I mean, we have dumps up because we just went throw it in somewhere, that's it. So that's the difference really. But if you can go to Dompe, you can see how a real sanitary landfill, because that was done properly really. Because they got funds from Korea, and they put a huge line at the bottom and covered the whole thing with, then they put those leachate collection pipes. It has a treatment plant, then it has gas collection pipes, etc. So if you can, it's interesting to go there and see actually. And now they're actually dumping waste there, little by little. And also one other thing is, in a sanitary landfill, when you dump waste, now for example, if you bring 2 tons of waste today, you dump it there, you don't just dump it and go off. You have to cover the waste. You cover it with soil. So you don't see that there is waste underneath, right? If you get a chance to go to a sanitary landfill in any other country, like for example Korea, etc., or Japan, you can see when you go into a sanitary landfill site, you can't say that there is waste. It's like a beautiful garden, because finally they fill the whole thing with soil, and they grow all kinds of trees, etc. And you can't even say that there is a waste dump there. So that is the difference between a sanitary landfill site and these dumps that we are having in Sri Lanka. So this is what you are talking about. The very first sanitary landfill site, not Vilbia, it has been already opened in Dompe. So this was implemented by, there was a project called the Pilisaru project in the Central Environmental Authority, where CEA has been assisting the local authorities to set up, to manage municipal waste. So a lot of local authorities have been helped by the CEA to manage their waste. Then when it comes to hazardous waste management, there is also now, I told you there is a problem of municipal waste disposal in Sri Lanka. So when it comes to hazardous waste, which is really toxic and it's dangerous waste, which comes from, where does hazardous waste come from generally? Huh? Yeah? Yeah, hospitals. Hospital is one. Industries, yeah. Mainly industries and hospitals, right? Now you will see that there is no proper place to dispose of hazardous waste. So industries have if you have very toxic waste, for example waste containing cyanide or mercury or something like that, you can't just go and dump it even in a sanitary landfill site, right? You have to have specially made sites for dumping of hazardous waste. So in Sri Lanka we don't even have a site for normal municipal waste. Naturally, we don't have any site for hazardous waste at all. So it's actually a major problem in Sri Lanka. But fortunately, we are not a highly industrialized country, right? We don't generate a lot of hazardous waste. But there are some industries which are generating hazardous waste, which has a lot of chemicals in them. Then of course, hospitals definitely generate a lot of hazardous waste. Every hospital generates hazardous waste. No? So there is a major issue that you don't have a place to dump this hazardous waste. So now the Central Environmental Authority has gazetted, they have a gazette notification where they have gazetted waste which they think is hazardous, right? If you look at this gazette notification, you can find out what are the types of waste that are hazardous. For example, waste containing mercury or chromium or cyanide, all those things are considered as hazardous waste because they are very toxic materials, right? Then in addition to that, as I have said, hospital waste is considered as a hazardous waste. Because why is it a hazardous waste? More than toxicity, what is the problem with hospital waste? Yeah, syringes are a problem. Syringes, yeah, that's syringes, and also it's also infectious, no? Infectious. Just a minute. Hello? මේ මම මේ සමහර විට කොළඹ පිට මම හරියටම ෂුවර් නෑ මම මේ කොළඹ ඉන්නවා නම් ඩෙෆිනිට්ලි එන්න. Right. Right. Okay. So if you look at now, majority of hospitals in Sri Lanka do not dispose of their waste properly. In Colombo, of course, they have some kind of, because there are companies that collect the hospital waste and they incinerate it. But in most of the other cities, they just dump their hospital waste in some, with the municipal waste, it goes sometimes. So it's a very kind of unsatisfactory situation that there is in dealing with hospital waste in Sri Lanka. So if you look at hazardous waste from many industries are not properly disposed of. So lack of a disposal site is a problem. Then there's a company called Holcim. Of course, it's not called Holcim now. It has been sold to some Thai company. And what they do is they accept some hazardous waste, which they incinerate because they have a cement kiln, right? Cement kilns, but I don't know whether these new companies are also doing that. Maybe all are aware. So what they used to do was, when the Holcim cement company was there, they used to accept hazardous waste from industries and burn it in their cement kiln, right? Because when you look at a cement kiln, the cement kiln reaches a very high temperature, right, of nearly 1000 degrees or more, 1000 degrees centigrade. So at that temperature, even hazardous waste, it will break down. So the best way to deal with hazardous waste is to burn it at a very high temperature, right? In other countries, what you do with hazardous waste is they have high temperature incinerators for hazardous waste and they burn it in the incinerator. But of course, high temperature incinerators are very, very expensive, right? So in Sri Lanka, I don't think we can afford one in the first place. So the next best alternative is the cement kiln that we have. So you can burn hazardous waste in cement kilns. So this Holcim company used to do that business. They used to take waste. Of course, the companies had to pay for it. They didn't do it free. They had to pay, and Holcim used to burn that waste in the cement kiln. Then the other problem that I was talking about is the inappropriate siting of industry. Inappropriate siting of industries can result in pollution problems and also nuisance, right? So in Sri Lanka, this is caused mainly by small scale cottage type of industry, because people suddenly they'll think of starting a small industry inside their house, right? They'll start a small packaging industry or a small grinding mill or something. Sometimes inside a housing scheme. So when you start an industry like this in a house, at the beginning they start it very small. So when the business grows, they expand it, right? And then suddenly you find that this becomes a very big industry. And then because it's in the wrong place, it becomes a very big issue. Because the industry is in the wrong place. In a housing scheme you can't put industry. No? So this is a very big issue in Sri Lanka because a lot of industries are unauthorized. Before you put an industry, you have to get the approval of the local authority, you have to get the approval of the CEA, sometimes you have to get the approval of UDA, and many of these industries are what we call unauthorized industries. They just put it, they don't get approval from anybody. So that kind of industries always cause problems. Whereas if you look at bigger industries, which are very polluting, they normally get approvals from CEA, UDA, local authorities, they normally get those approvals. So when they get the approval, CEA or the UDA will look at the site and see whether that site is actually suitable for an industry, right? So because of that, normally in Sri Lanka, the pollution problems are caused mainly by small scale industries, unauthorized industries, rather than a large scale big industries. So bigger industries usually go through a site approval procedure from CEA and the local authority. So CEA and the local authority will look and see whether the site is appropriate or okay for the industry. Then of course there is a government policy that high polluting industry should be within what we call industrial estates, right? But the problem in Sri Lanka is that we don't have sufficient industrial estates in the country. If you had industrial estate and all the polluting industries are put inside the industrial estate, then there won't be pollution problems to the outside people, because it's all within the industrial estate and you can manage it very well. For example, now you get all the BOI industries in Ekala or in what is the other place? Ekala and Biyagama, right? So all these, they are polluting industries, but they are all in one location. So it's very easy to manage them. Then coming on to the other issue, that's water pollution. Now if you look at pollution of water bodies in Sri Lanka, it's mainly from what we call non-point sources. What are non-point sources? Non-point sources are what we call like sewerage, right? Some industries discharge untreated waste into water bodies. Say for example, rubber factories, right? So you find rubber factories discharging their wastewater into water bodies like rivers and lakes, etc. But if you look at the whole of Sri Lanka, pollution due to chemicals or industrial effluent is not widespread. So you must have heard about this Ratupasala case sometime back, where a very large industry that was making rubber gloves was, all the wells in that area were supposed to be polluted by this industry, and then all the people in that area started protesting, and finally it became a very big political issue also. And then it's a very large scale industry which was exporting rubber gloves all over the world, and they were earning a lot of foreign exchange. But still, for all, that industry has to move from that place to another place, because people in that area were protesting that their wells are getting polluted because of this industry. Then, now if you look at Moratu and Ratmalana, if anyone of you all are living in Moratu and Ratmalana or in Ekala and Jayala, you know that these areas are full of industries as well as residential areas, right? So Moratu and Ratmalana first started as an industrial zone in I think in the 1940s or 50s, I think, when the government brought all the major industries to Ratmalana and Moratu. But after that, the houses and residential areas also began to grow in those same areas. So there is an issue that you get industries as well as residential areas in Ratmalana. You can see now you know that asbestos is a very it's a cancer causing fiber. You know that, no? Asbestos. Have you all heard about asbestos? How many have heard about asbestos? Only one? 1, 2, 3. Only 3? All of you all know. Okay, all of you all know that I don't know what this roof is, but asbestos is a cancer causing fiber, and it has been proved beyond any doubt that it causes cancer. And in most other countries, definitely in the Western countries, they have just totally banned the use of asbestos. But in Sri Lanka, we still bring some types of asbestos, and we are still using it in the roofs, right? Of course, the Western people they are sometimes neurotic when it comes to this kind of thing. I know even in the American embassy in Sri Lanka, they removed their whole roof because it was made of asbestos, because they won't allow asbestos to be in the roof or anywhere. They are very scared. But we, of course, we live in asbestos roof houses, because the thing is now, when you take a roofing sheet, it's not pure fiber, there is cement in it, cement and asbestos fibers, right? So most of the asbestos fibers are bound in the cement. So you are not exposed to asbestos fibers like that, but if you look at an asbestos factory, if you go to asbestos factory, people in those factories are definitely exposed to asbestos. And there are many people who get lung cancer because of being exposed to asbestos fibers. So when working in asbestos factories, of course, very dangerous, right? Because you are definitely going to get exposed to asbestos fibers. But when you put it on the roof, it is not that dangerous. But of course, there is some risk, because those fibers can get out from the cement. When the asbestos, the sheets get old, or when it gets what do you call puska, like when it gets wet and it gets moldy like puska, then the fibers can escape from the and of course, you find that these buses and all, they just, yeah, I have seen so many buses you just saw in the asbestos sheet into. So when you cut those, all the fibers are going everywhere. You are definitely exposed to asbestos. So it is a very dangerous fiber. But still for all, we use it in Sri Lanka, and you find even a asbestos industry in Ratpalana and even in Ekala, which are very highly populated areas, right? Now you will never find that situation in a foreign country. I mean, foreign country, in a more developed country, you won't find that because people don't like to be exposed to asbestos. So anyway, the situation in Ratpalan is that you find industries, even toxic, very hazardous industries like asbestos industries, battery factories, textile industries, right next to residential houses. Then the wastewater from the industries are treated in the common waste treatment plant prior to discharge into the sea. Now, if you were living in Ratmalana maybe 15-20 years ago, if you walked along Ratmalana, you could see sometimes in the drains all kinds of colored wastewater going, like red color, in another drain there's blue color, like because of the textile industries. And they used to just discharge their waste into the drains, right? So it was actually a very big problem even for the CEA because these industries had been established there maybe 30-40 years ago, right? And they didn't have at that time there was no requirement for industries to treat their waste. It's only after the National Environmental Act came into force that industries had to start treating their wastewater because under the National Environmental Act there are gazette notifications saying that wastewater has to be treated up to certain standards. So it's only after about 1990 that industries had to treat their wastewater. So before that, if you walked along Ratpalana, you could see all kinds of colors wastewater going in the drains. And there was a very big problem in Ratpalana and also Ekala because a large number of industries concentrated in one place and no place to discharge of their wastewater, right? So because of that, the government, that is the National Water Supply and Drainage Board, they constructed to, is anybody from the National NWSTB, National Water Supply? No. You are from there, no? You must be knowing about these plants, no? Huh? You worked in the project? No. So you must be knowing about. Now all the industries have connected to it, the treatment plant. All of them? Yeah, it completed some time back, no? 7 years ago. Yeah, so the water board, they constructed these common waste treatment plants in Morotu and Ratmalana and also in Ekala and Jayala. So what the common waste treatment does is the industries, they don't have to treat the waste on their own. I mean, they don't have to build their own treatment plant or anything like that. They can discharge into the common waste treatment plant run by the water board. And then the water board will treat this waste and then discharge into the sea, no? Into the ocean. Yeah. So the water board will treat the waste and discharge. Of course, the industry has to pay the water board for that treatment. So this is what has been done in Morotu, Ratpalana and also in Ekala and Jayala. So the wastewater from the industries are treated in the common waste treatment plant prior to discharge into the sea. And the industries pay according to their waste load. So if they discharge a big waste load, they will have to pay more. And if it's a little bit, they don't have to pay so much. Now we come to the human-elephant conflict. Now every day you hear something about the human-elephant conflict, no? In the newspaper, either an elephant is killed or a man is killed. So that is the human-elephant conflict. It's becoming actually a very major issue in Sri Lanka because one of the main reasons for the human-elephant conflict is unplanned development, right? It's a major cause for this. For example, large-scale development projects built over elephant corridors. Now there are very large irrigation schemes, highways, airports, so many large scale projects where you sometimes build in areas where there are elephants, and there are what we call elephant corridors, because there are certain areas which elephants always use that corridor to go from one place to the other. They have got used to that, and they will always use that same road to go. So those are called elephant corridors. Now if you go and put some kind of development project in the middle of an elephant corridor, naturally the human elephant conflict comes, because the elephant is used to going on that road, and when he finds people on that road, naturally he will get, he can even kill them. So then only the human elephant conflict arises. So now we come on to the regulatory functions of the CEA, which you should know about. So the CEA, after the National and Environmental Act was passed, it has actually focused its attention on two regulatory functions. One is called the Environmental Impact Assessment process. How many of us have heard about the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment? One. Only one. Okay. Everybody almost has heard about the Environmental Impact Assessment process. Then the second one is called the Environmental Protection Licensor for industries, that is to control pollution from industries. So these are the two main regulatory procedures by the Central Environmental Authority. So let's talk about this Environmental Impact Assessment or EIA. So environmental impact assessment is one of the most powerful tools in operationalizing the concept of sustainable development. You all have heard about this word sustainable development, no? Everybody has heard of the word development. Everyone knows what development is. You don't develop the country, but it's a recent thing, this sustainable development. So if you want to do environmental impact assessment is one way in which you can ensure sustainable development in the country. Sustainable development is development that will sustain for a long time and also not destroy all the natural resources. You can do development in many ways. Like if you look at countries in some Western countries, when they were developing very fast, they didn't bother about the environment at all. They can destroy all the forests, they can destroy all the wetlands, etc. You can do development like that. Now even in Colombo, you can see all these high-rise buildings coming up like mushrooms everywhere, right? And they are building on wetlands, they are destroying so that is not sustainable development. If you want to do sustainable development, you will protect the environment that is there. You will do development, but you will make sure that you think about the environment and try to protect what we have. That is sustainable development, right? So if you are trying to develop Sri Lanka, you can do it in two ways. One way is to just develop it, never mind about the forest, you cut down the forest, you fill up all the wetlands and destroy all the natural resources in the country and develop. That is one way of doing it. You can do it. Then the other way is the sustainable way of developing, which can be done where you have to give attention to protection of the environment also. So you will protect the forest cover that you have, you will protect the wildlife areas, you will protect the wetland areas. You can protect those areas but still develop. So which one is the better out of the two? As engineers. Engineers of course will have a tendency to just develop because you are thinking of construction all the time. I don't know whether the more recent engineers are different, but if you look at the older engineers, their mind is focused on construction and that kind of thing. But I think when the new people who are passing out from the universities, I'm sure they must be teaching something about the environment. No? Do you have environmental components in it? You have, no? So now environmental impact assessment is one of those procedures through which you can actually think about the environment a little when you are developing, right? When you are doing development projects. So environmental impact assessment is a planning tool which could go a long way in ensuring a sustainable development process. All major infrastructure projects as well as major development projects now require an EIA prior to implementation, thereby ensuring that almost all adverse environmental impacts will be mitigated. Right? So, what you do in environmental impact assessment is, what is the purpose of an EIA? So, the purpose of an EIA is to ensure that development plans or projects under consideration are environmentally sound and sustainable, and that environmental consequences are recognized and taken into account early in the project design. Right? So, this is what environmental impact assessment is. When you are planning the project itself, at that stage, you think about what are the potential impacts from these projects to the environment, right? For example, if you are doing an irrigation project, now irrigation projects are very large scale projects, right? You have dams and reservoirs, etc. Now, before you do a large scale reservoir project, you have to do an environmental impact, and now it's the law, so you have to do an environmental impact assessment, right? So, at that stage, you have to think of, when you build this reservoir, what is going to happen to the environment, right? Is a forest cover, are you going to inundate some forest area? Or, I mean, there can be so many impacts in a reservoir, right? Or if you are going to build a dam across a river, there can be problems for the downstream, ecology and the people, etc. So, before you build the project itself, you think what are the problems that can arise from this project. And what you do is you try to mitigate or minimize those problems that will come, right? Now, the classic case is the Umawe project, right? Umawe project, all of you would have heard, no? The problems in, as engineers, you also be interested in the Umawe project, I think, because there were massive problems in the Umawe project. And who got the blame for that? Who got the blame for all the problems? Huh? Huh? Who got the blame? Huh? I can't hear anybody's voice. I don't know whether I'm short of hearing or your voice is too low. I mean, there are so many things in the newspaper, but they were blaming everybody. But who were they blaming the most? Huh? No, nobody blamed the feasibility study. That's the problem. You know, because they were all blaming the EIA for that. Every newspaper article that I saw was telling this was not there in the EIA report, this was not there, they didn't look at this, they didn't look at this. But I didn't see one single report saying there was some problem with the feasibility study, which is actually the problem. But nobody was talking about the feasibility study at all. So really, now, I mean, okay, when you are doing a project, you have to look at environmental issues during the EIA process. I mean, you do the EIA much later than the design stage, etc. Feasibilities are done much earlier, right? But during the feasibility study also, you should actually look at environmental issues, not only engineering and those kind of issues. You have to look at the environment also to some extent. So, in the Umawe project, one thing, the feasibility study was faulty. They didn't look at all the geological, they should have done proper geological studies, right? They didn't do those investigations. They had to do, I mean, when you are building a underground tunnel, you have to do those geological studies in the feasibility study. So they haven't done those things. That was one problem, right? Then of course there was a major problem with the contractor who was doing the tunneling, because I don't know engineering, but what they were saying is that when you are doing that tunneling, if there's a leak or something, you are supposed to seal it immediately, which they didn't do. So there was some problem. Somebody has to monitor that contractor, no? When he's doing that work, somebody in Sri Lanka, I mean, or some Iranian contractor or somebody, and Sri Lankan, is there anybody from the irrigation department? No. So rightfully, somebody from the irrigation department should have monitored that contractor when he was doing that tunneling, right? So he has not been monitored properly, because when he was tunneling, when the leaks came, he should have immediately sealed those. He didn't do that. He just went on tunneling. So which is why the water was going and going and going for months on end, and all the groundwater got, there was a huge problem. But everybody was blaming the environmental impact assessment report. So this is the problem. The real problem was the feasibility report, and there was some problem with the monitoring of the contractor. So that was the real problem in the Maui project, whereas everybody was blaming the EIA report. But anyway, the EIA report also must have been faulty. I don't know, I haven't seen that report. But more than that, I think the feasibility report is actually the biggest problem there. So the purpose of an EIA is to ensure that development plans or projects under consideration are environmentally sound and sustainable, and that environmental consequences are recognized and taken into account early in the project design. So when you study the potential environmental problems of a project at the early stage before you start the project, you can identify what are the, now if you did the proper feasibility study and the proper EIA for the Umawe project, they would have recognized there was some geological formation which could cause water leaks, and they would have known that this problem is likely to happen when you dig this tunnel, right? Then early in the project design itself, they could have planned what they were going to do when this problem came, but they didn't do that. So this is the purpose of an EIA. You can identify the potential issues early on before you start the project, and you can suggest mitigation measures at that point. Then if you look at this history of environmental impact assessment in Sri Lanka, actually EIA first started in the Coast Conservation Act, right? The Coast Conservation Department, they have jurisdiction over the coastal zone. So any projects, major projects coming in the coastal zone have to undergo this EIA process under the Coast Conservation Act. So actually the EIA process was first brought into the Coast Conservation Act, not the National and Environmental Act. So it was only in 1988 that amendments to the National and Environmental Act brought in EIA for all projects, not only the coastal zone, in the other areas also. So the question is, does every project require an EIA? Now this is a question that a lot of people ask, and the answer is no. Every project does not require an EIA, and only so-called prescribed projects require an EIA. So there's a list of projects. If you look at the EIA Gazette, you will find that the Gazette has a list of projects that require EIA. For example, large-scale projects only need EIA. The list of prescribed projects, if you want to look at that, they are listed in Gazette number 772/22 dated 24/6/93. In 1993 only this Gazette notification came. So if you want to find out whether the project that you are doing requires an EIA, you can look at this Gazette notification. So a total list of 31 projects are listed as requiring EIA. So major 31 projects, and also there are, if a project is coming in a what we call an environmentally sensitive area, then also you have to do EIA. So now EIA decision making, now there is a misconception in Sri Lanka that the EIA process is effective only if it results in the rejection of projects, especially NGOs. NGOs think that if you only reject projects only, the EIA is very efficient, right? But the purpose of EIA is not to reject projects. That is not the purpose of EIA. What is the purpose of EIA? What is the purpose? If it's not to reject projects, what is the purpose?
Standardize.
Huh?
Standardize.
Yeah, standardize, and also to see whether all the environmental and social issues have been addressed. That's the main thing actually. And also another thing is to select the best option, best alternative. You know, when you're doing feasibility studies, even now you can look at about six different options. No, even for example, a reservoir or hydropower project, etc. You can have different alternatives, right? So through an EIA, you can find which one is the most environmentally and socially acceptable option. So that is also can be done by EIA in addition to the feasibility study. Feasibility study also, you are looking at the cost and engineering feasibility, etc. I mean, you look at mostly the engineering feasibilities, no, and the cost. So, but in addition to that, in the EIA process, you can also look at the environmental feasibility. So, if the environmental feasibility is also looked at in the feasibility studies, it's actually better rather than doing it later. Because most feasibility studies in Sri Lanka look at only the engineering and that kind of and the cost, etc. during the feasibility stage. But if you can also look at some environmental issues at that point in the early stages, it will be very much better. But it's not been done in Sri Lanka. Any questions? Hello? I don't know, it will be 7 o'clock. Why? Lock it, I said lock it. Are you mad? I don't think I told you to lock and which one didn't you lock? That's okay, I'm going. So in about a little while I'm going. It's okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm at a lecture now. I can't be talking. I'm doing a lecture. Okay. So now if you look at projects in Sri Lanka, many projects in Sri Lanka are politically driven, right? Mostly government projects, of course, right? If you look at almost all major projects, there politics is behind it. Some minister or some president or somebody is behind the project, right? They are politically driven. And there are many instances where proper feasibility studies are not even done. Now when you do a major project, you have to do a feasibility study. But in some of these major projects, you don't even do proper feasibility studies, right? So in such instances, the EIA procedure becomes part of the feasibility study in addition to the EIA. So when they have to do the EIA, they have to look at issues that should have been looked in the feasibility study. This happens a lot in many projects. For example, now I have seen many projects. Some agencies, they suggest industrial estates in certain locations because the minister wants to put an industrial estate in his electorate or something, right? Now they haven't done a proper feasibility and there is nowhere that you see any water for the industries, but they want to put an industrial estate there. So is that that's not a feasible proposal, no? They don't even look and see whether there's electricity, whether there's water, whether there's whether there are highways, etc. to take the produce. So those are called feasibility, but there is no feasibility. They don't even look at the basic thing like water. Then this is a real thing that happened. They wanted to bring in the world's largest sulfuric acid factory to Sri Lanka. Indian company wanted to bring this world's largest sulfuric acid manufacturing plant to Sri Lanka. And where did they want to put this sulfuric acid factory? Next to a Ranaviru housing project. So do you put a sulfuric acid manufacturing plant next to a housing project? See how sensible that is. Then Veeravilla Airport. Okay, when the Veeravilla Airport was now of course we have the Mattala Airport. Before that it was the Veeravilla Airport, where the ex-president he wanted to put the Veeravilla Airport. And where was this suggested? In the middle of 3 bird sanctuaries. There are 3 bird sanctuaries surrounding the proposed airport, right? Now for one thing, putting airports within bird sanctuaries is very dangerous for for flights. There are airplanes that the airplanes have crashed into the. Now there was one incident in New York, I think, where all the engines failed because it hit some birds, and the pilot had to land the. I don't know. This was about maybe 5 years ago, I think. He was going to coming into the New York airport, and then the birds hit the engines. Not one engine, both engines failed because the birds hit them, and he was forced to land the plane in the river. And of course he saved all the people there because he landed the aircraft in the river. But the thing is, it is very dangerous to have airports near where bird sanctuaries in Veeravilla. There are a lot of migratory birds that come. So hundreds of birds come flying together. And if an airplane comes, there is a very high possibility of hitting those birds. So who in their right minds? Of course, these engineers also there. I have to say, there were engineers who considered that place as a good place. Why? Because the politician told them to put it there. So is that a professional behavior in the part of an engineer? I don't think so. Now we all are all engineers, right? I know because I was in the CEA when they were proposing this Mattala airport. That Veeravilla was rejected after an EIA, and then they suggested Mattala airport, which is also not a very good location, right? And the engineer in charge was saying, "Mama danne, mata kiwa metana daanne gela, mam metana daanna." I mean, this is what is wrong with Sri Lanka. You know, professionals don't behave professionally. I mean, they are just saying, okay, the minister or the president or prime minister told me to put this, and I am putting it. Now, he is a professional who has been trained he is trained in some subject, okay? He is an engineer. He is supposed to know how a airport is supposed to, he is supposed to select the best location for a airport. The president is not a professional, no, he is just he's a politician. I mean, naturally, you can't blame him. This is why I say in Sri Lanka, everybody is blaming the politicians. I never blame the politicians. I blame 100% the professional people in Sri Lanka for all these wrong decisions that have been taken. Because people are so scared of these politicians, they will just say, when the politician says, you do this, they just meekly say, yes, we'll do it. I mean, they may be scared of their jobs. That is a different matter. But you don't have to be scared of your job. I know, because I have seen many instances when if you tell a politician straight to his face, of course you don't say that in a whole crowded room where he is going to be very embarrassed when he says put a industrial estate or a airport here. You get up and say no, you can't put a airport there because of this. Naturally he'll be embarrassed. You can't do it that way. But there are ways and means of getting that message across to him, right? But I see professionals, 99% of them in Sri Lanka never say that to a politician. They will simply say, yes sir, we'll do it the way you want. And what does that politician know? He doesn't know anything. He may not have passed his 8th standard even. Has he gone to university? No, you don't have to go to university always, but what I am saying is, he is not a trained professional. He doesn't know. And it is the duty of a professional, right, to tell that person what is the correct thing to do. In these cases, nobody, so I don't blame the president. I don't blame any of those politicians for doing what they did, because I totally blame these engineers, these people who are professionals who are in those agencies. Why didn't they open their mouth and say, this is the wrong place to put this thing? They will always listen. They are not going to make mistakes. Politicians are basically very frightened, because if they do the wrong thing, they are going to suffer. People are not going to vote for them, no? So if somebody tells them properly, and especially if a professional tells them, they are very much scared actually. They will listen to it. They may get angry, but they are not going to tell you to go home because you said that. They will be grateful at some point to you. So Veeravilla airport, we had to, because whoever the agency that was doing this airport, they were too scared to tell the president, you should not put an airport here. So that agency didn't say anything. The EIA had to reject this Veeravilla airport, right? So things like that. Then there was another proposal where they wanted to bring a shipbreaking industry. Shipbreaking industry is one of the dirtiest industries in the whole world, right? Where they break up old ships, and it's really a polluting industry which will pollute the whole sea in the area. And most of the countries don't do this industry because it's so dirty. And the only countries that are doing it is Bangladesh and Vietnam. And even now they even have stopped it, I think. I'm not sure, but I think they have stopped it. And there was a company that wanted to bring a shipbreaking industry into Trincomalee Bay. Trincomalee Bay is one of the most unique bays in the world. And they wanted to bring this shipbreaking industry. Okay, I will tell you. I was in the sea at that time. And what did everybody do? Coast Conservation Department, the Navy. I went for a meeting where it was chaired by, I think, Secretary of the Ministry of Finance or something. And I was embarrassed to see all these big people, CEB chairman, Coast Conservation Director, the Navy commander, all the very big shots, they were all saying, yes, yes, we'll bring that. And only the CA had to say, of course, we can't say it very open down when you can't bring it like that. I mean, but through a certain strategy, we conveyed that message that this is a very dirty industry that you should not bring it into Sri Lanka. And they didn't bring it. So because you have to convey that message to them, they don't know. I mean, they see a lot of money in front of their eyes. They don't know this is a dirty industry. So someone who knows has to tell them. If you don't tell them, they don't know. I mean, you can't blame them. That's why I never blame politicians. That is one thing. I blame the professionals in Sri Lanka. Professionals in Sri Lanka are not professionals. I mean, look at the doctors. Are they professionals? I mean, the way they behave. I mean, it's disgusting actually. It's disgusting the way they behave. Is that a professional way to behave? Now we all are professionals, we all are sitting professional exams. It's not knowing engineering, that is not the important thing. I think the important thing is how to behave in a professional way. I mean, would a doctor in any other country strike the way that the doctors are striking in Sri Lanka? Never. Never. I mean, they are holding the lives of so many people in their hands and they are just striking. For what? Is that professional behavior? No. I think our professionals are really, I mean, very low quality. This is why I think more than sitting for this B paper, I think this kind of professional ethical behavior is that is what is important actually. To have a backbone and tell a politician, I think more than knowing about environment, I think that's what you should do really. If any of you are working in how many are working in government agencies in this group? Is anybody working in a government agency? No, all private sector. Private. Only one hand. Where do you work? Huh? Water board. No. Water board, of course, not a very controversial place here. You don't get all these controversial things, but there are many, like the CEB. CEB now going on and on about the coal power. Why? Why are they so keen about bringing coal power when there's natural gas which is so environmentally friendly? They are not. They don't like natural gas. They like coal. Why? I don't know. Is anybody from the CEB? I like to know why they like coal so much. All the countries are discontinuing coal, and only our CEB engineers are going on and on and on about bringing coal into the country. It is such a polluting industry. You can see what is happening in Norachole. You can see that ash dump which is so many feet high and it's polluting all the area. Then there is the emissions that come from it, sulfur dioxide, mercury, radioactive material. And they are still saying coal is the cheapest. Coal may be the cheapest to buy, but look at the environmental damage that it's doing. And is that professional behavior? No, I don't think so. I hope somebody is listening to it actually. Because I think, there is something wrong with professionals in Sri Lanka today. So even the shipbreaking industry, they wanted to bring to Trincomalee Bay Area, right? And all the people are jumping over the tables to bring in this industry, all the big shots. And only when this message was conveyed to the highest people in the land that this was a very dirty industry and that even for 1,000 million you should not bring this. But they took that message, that is the important thing. They being politicians, they took that message. Even the president, when he was told that Veeravilla airport is not a good place he didn't fight, he just, of course they had various strategies they showed on TV that the farmers were telling them not to put it there and that they were doing because of that, etc. I mean, those are political strategies, that's okay. But they did listen to the professional advice. So if you think that politicians don't listen, that's not true. They listen very well, but you have to tell them in a language they understand, in a way they understand, and also at a place that they won't be embarrassed, not in a big meeting with hundreds of people where you get up and say what you are doing is very foolish. You can't do that. You can't embarrass them, but there is ways and means of conveying that message to them. So now if you look at all of these projects should never have come to the EIA stage. Right? Without doing EIS, you can tell that these locations are not suitable for these projects. But the agencies that were handling these projects didn't tell them. They said, okay, you go through a EIA and then you find out whether to do the project or not. So you had to go through a EIA process for this. Of course, the shipbreaking industry didn't go through a EIA because they just rejected it at the beginning itself and they didn't go through with it. But all the other projects went through EIA, so they had to spend a lot of money, and they took about 1 year to finish the EIA and say no after that. So this Indian investor for 1 year, he was flying in and out of Sri Lanka and wasting his money. He spent billions on his EIA report, and at the end of it, we had to say no, we can't allow it. Whereas at the beginning itself, that Minister of Industries or somebody who could have said no, you can't put a world's largest sulfuric acid next to a housing project. They could have said it. You don't need a EIA. Even a 8th standard child can tell you that sulfuric acid factory next to a housing project is not suitable. No, you don't need EIA or any studies like that. A sensible person will know. So, but those agencies didn't make that decision. They just simply waited till the EIA was done to say this poor investor had to spend millions unnecessarily. So this is what happens in Sri Lanka. So many agencies do not make the decisions which are possible under their own legislation but await a decision of the EIA. So this is what happened in all these cases. This can cost a lot in terms of money and time for the project proponent as well as to other agencies. So issues such as water availability for the project, siting issues, land issues, risk assessments, zoning issues, legal issues, these issues should be looked at the feasibility stage of the project. But most of the projects in Sri Lanka look at these issues only during the EIA stage. That's too late. You are supposed to look at these issues early, before you do a project. Do you have any questions? My mouth is also empty. Any questions? No, not always professional, but they also have a lot of faults. No, though they may be. Why are they leaving? They don't have to leave.
This system now is women reflect the whole country's view with the world.
225?
Yes.
You mean the politicians?
Yes.
I am not saying they are good, oh my God, no, I am not saying that they are wonderful people.
Yes.
No, but what I am saying is, we don't have to be scared of them, especially the professionals. You don't have to be scared of them.
Yes.
What I am saying is, you all are trained people in a certain area. I am not saying that all professionals are bad. There are some professionals who speak up and do all that. I am not at all there, and I am not saying that politicians are very good people either. All I am saying is, the message I am giving is, you should not just give in to them without giving your professional opinion. That's all I am saying. I am not blaming. I am blaming professionals for not speaking up, because that is what I have seen in most cases. That is problem. I know professionals are leaving. It's a very sad thing, but they think that those countries, the politicians may not interfere. That is true. But it's so much better if you can stay in your own country and help to develop this country. I can understand. They must think if I go to America or somewhere, I can peacefully work. But you don't get. Now I yourself lived in America for a long time, right? You don't. Though you may sit here and think it's a wonderful place, you are also discriminated. You can see what Trump is saying, no? You can see how they discriminate. There is subtle discrimination in those countries. You are not treated like some equal citizen, never. So, it's better to be in your own country and at least treated like a first class citizen rather than go there. You may get more pay or something. Definitely you'll get pay. Here you won't get a huge, when you convert dollars into Sri Lankan rupees, it's a huge amount, that's true. But you do get subtle discrimination in those countries. You don't get equal treatment. You may think so, but you don't. You can see now in America, in Europe, everywhere there's a huge backlash against immigrants. Why? Because they're angry. So why are they leaving? I don't know. I don't understand. I also lived in America for a long time. My husband is an architect. He worked there. But we came back to Sri Lanka, and I'm very happy that I came back actually. If we stayed there, I had a green card, but we gave it up and came back, and I'm happy I did it. Why do you want to live in that? I mean, it's a different culture. I didn't want to bring up my children in that kind of culture. My husband could have earned, I could have earned very much more than what I mean. I worked in the CA with very low salary, that is true. But I got very much more job satisfaction than what I could have got to the private sector and earned more. But I think in the government sector, you have a lot of job satisfaction, whatever it is. And that is also important. Job is not only money, I mean, there is more to jobs than money. So, I mean, all these people, professionals who are leaving, I don't know, I mean, it's up to each person, of course. So, to some people, money is important, to some people, other things are important. I don't know, so it depends. But you should not leave just because some politician is doing something. I know it's a terrible situation here. But what to do? I mean, you have to wait here and make this country better rather than just leaving it. Leaving is very easy.
No, I mean, this whole system is politicized.
That is true. Yeah, but politicized why? Because we give in to that. No, because we are giving into that politicization.
Most of the actions you also at level, people
Ah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. That is true. What you are saying is there is a point there, because all these chairmen and these high level people are politicized people. No, that is true. That I agree.
yes, when professionals work under them,
Yeah.
because they have a voice, they unions or whatever,
Yeah.
they voice, but it won't go.
Yeah, that is true. That is
Just
true.
stop.
That I have to agree with you. I mean, because the top people are politicized, they are trying to save their jobs.
Professional silence, actually.
Yeah. That is
The
true.
voices are not taken up by media.
Yeah, I agree that, of course.
And then they cannot issue a statement without asking against CEO.
Yeah.
Those are the
Right. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Because they don't come to the professional directly, no?
Yes.
They talk with the chairman, no? Somebody like that. Yeah, that is true. That is there. I agree with you on that. But it's a very, very sad situation because all the professionals are leaving. But why?
Like engineers are always working under like administrative service also under them.
Hmm. That's the
That's
thing,
other
no?
one. Yeah.
Hmm.
The government sector.
But you all know, you all work under engineers, no, mostly.
No, not an immediate post is engineer,
But even now, even the chairman and all are normally engineers, no? They appoint, no? For example, for engineering organizations, it's always an engineer, no? Who is appointed.
and only it's a 2, 3.
Ah, really?
Engineering institute only 2, 3, not more than that.
Hmm.
Always 5 to
Yeah. That is true.
engineers.
But you have to try to make that system better. I mean, running away is not the solution. That's the thing.
Now, professional also wants to remove engineers from the institution and they want to take engineers role in the institution. How can
India, but I didn't understand what?
no, I mean scientific community or science.
Yes.
People wants to take the engineers job.
Engineer's job.
Yeah, so because now if you look at the whole country, only 1,500 engineers pass out, whereas science graduate more than 10,000.
Uh,
There's a big
so they are doing your job.
yes, that's the thing. And they don't recognize. We
Yes.
are great politicians.
That's true.
In professionals, and
So then you get frustrated, no? That is the problem. It's very sad actually.
and they say you are doing equal jobs.
Huh?
They are both are doing equal jobs. Equal jobs.
Yeah.
This is the other one.
No, the job may be equal. I mean, you can't say doctors are higher than engineers or engineers higher than scientists. You can't. I don't think so.
Everybody has their own.
Everybody has their expertise. Okay, the doctor has his expertise. Engineer can't be a doctor, no, or doctor can't be an engineer, no. So you have your expertise. The doctor has his expertise. Scientist has his expertise, and they are all equal. It is equal. I mean, in their own way. You can't say the doctor is higher than everybody else. I don't think, because they behave like that. That is because they are holding all the lives in their hands. But that's very wrong, I think. I mean, in that case, the engineers can just strike and switch off all these lights. I mean, actually, engineers. I must say that engineers have been much more professional that way. I mean, like for example, your CEB or something, they can decide tomorrow we are not going to give lights to everybody and stop the. I mean, that is very unprofessional. But they haven't done that, no?
And the other challenge is now there are government seats, engineering profession, seats, whatever the engineering government, engineering officers,
Yeah.
when they will stay 30 years.
Yeah.
In the same position.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yes, yes.
And the newcomers cannot make the way. That is also, yeah.
I think what you should do is you all should get into those jobs, like the higher level jobs like the chairman and the that kind of job should be open to engineers. Because whatever it is, engineers are very intelligent people. I mean, I think engineers are much more intelligent than, I don't know, that's my personal opinion, than doctors. Because they have to have some analytical minds, no? You can't just become an engineer. So I think they are very intelligent people. I mean, I have worked with engineers; they are very smart actually, compared to other professionals, because they have sharp brains. But that is true what you say. Very few engineers are at those in those top positions.
Yes.
That is true. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Then no other engineer can be entered those places.
Yeah, so they don't have way of going up like, no? That is true. Yeah, those problems are also there, I must say. Engineers are leaving, no? It's very sad for this country. Huh?
They learn from pure education and learn from whatever they are taking maximum out of them.
So actually the government also should think and allow them some opportunities, no?
Industries are not coming out.
That is true. I agree with you on that. So it's a very sad situation for this country.
I don't know whether you like it, but shipbreaking industry is a good industry. The thing is, when we look at Sri Lanka steel industry, all your billets are coming from outside. Those billets are made from scrap materials, like dump yard. Now, their country are getting polluted and fresh billets are taken by us. But somebody is getting polluted.
Somebody else.
Somebody else. So those are the things.
Yeah. So what they wanted was to bring it here and get the steel from those, no?
No, I mean, even the scale of investment. Actually, it's a globally where rather than getting virgin material from the
yeah, that's true because it's cheaper, no? But the industry itself is a polluting industry. I mean, it may be a.
Without pollution, we cannot run the industry. Sustainable means always with the.
That is true, but is it worth it? I mean, it was not worth.
This is my personal.
Yeah.
Because somewhere industry will come.
No, that is true.
Yes.
I mean, you can't say save the environment and not bring anything. I agree with you on that. But then Trincomalee Bay is not the place to put it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because Trincomalee Bay is a very, very sensitive where you are putting a hand up. I can't hear you. What? I can't hear him at all. I don't know whether something is wrong with my ears, but I can't hear you. Can you talk a little louder? Huh? Okay. No, to speak a little louder, I can hear them. What did he say? Did you hear? You heard what he said? Okay. So anyway, basically they don't do feasibility, so it's more interesting for me when you bring your point of view actually. Otherwise, I'm just saying something here and you agree with it, and when you disagree also, it's better. But I still think professionals have to be a bit more aggressive. That's true. Right? And I think a lot of them don't behave professionally. That also is true. Don't you agree?
No, it's from the education system. We say something and we do something else.
Yeah, our education system is our education system is really bad. I mean, no one is teaching now. I was talking about those duties and responsibilities. We are talking about our rights all the time, no? Sri Lankans, they are expecting something from the government or something for somebody. In other countries, they will look at their responsibilities and what they are supposed to do. We are always saying Government has to do this, government, because the government has trained young people like that, giving them everything, free education, free health. Where in the world do you get free education up to university level? Tell me one other country. Free health service for everybody. No other country gives like that. I mean, but do you appreciate it? No, never. We are still asking for more and more and more. Why, I don't know. Okay, so these are the problems that we have. So the main purpose of EIA is not the approval or rejection of projects, but to ensure that projects which are proposed go ahead with minimum damage to the environment. That is the purpose of EIA. And also that you select the most environmentally suitable project. That is the purpose of EIA. Then I don't think you need to know about this, right? Then this is important because what you said about shipbreaking, we cannot and should not take the stand that all possible impacts from a project should be 100% mitigated, right? When you are getting large scale industrial projects or something, of course there will be some pollution. So no one is telling you to mitigate all the problems that are coming from this project. There will be some pollution, but we have to give in, I mean, there has to be a balance between, no, and now as you said, shipbreaking industry may be a good industry, but of course it has to be put in the proper place then. And also you have to take all the pollution control measures. So when you are selecting that industry, you have to select the proper place to site it, take all the precautions so that the pollution from that industry won't damage the whole country and the area. So that is what you have to do. These I don't think you need to know. These are EIA reports, and you don't need to know about EIA reports. So the conclusion is that EIA process is meant to assist in the decision making process. So the EIA reports are not meant to confuse decision makers with unnecessary details, but give a clear, concise analysis of the project impacts on the environment and the extent to which they could be mitigated and details of impacts that cannot be mitigated. So this is really the purpose of EIA. So the decision maker, when they look at that report, they will know whether what are the impacts from these projects on the environment, whether those impacts can be minimized or mitigated, and also the extent, and also whether there are any impacts which cannot be mitigated. That's all you need to know. Then the decision, whoever is making the decision will make the decision that he is going to go ahead with the project or not go ahead with the project. So EIA in Sri Lanka, many project proponents look at EIA as a hurdle to development. So people say, oh, this EIA, it delays a lot of projects. It takes 6 months, 1 year to get a EIA approved, and it's a real hurdle to development. I have heard a lot of people, investors, industrialists saying this thing. So EIA can assist in planning a better project. As engineers, EIA can be made of use of to plan a better project overall. But as engineers, what you can do is actually, during the feasibility stage itself, you can look at those environmental issues. Then for you, the EIA stage will be very easy because you don't have to go through this whole rigmarole of doing all those studies again. When you are doing the feasibility study, look into some of those environmental issues that are coming. And then at the feasibility stage itself, you can think of what are the potential mitigation measures I can take. Then when it comes to the EIA stage, for you to write that report will be very easy because you have already looked at those issues earlier during the feasibility stage. Engineers involved in project planning should also look into environmental aspects during the planning stage. This doesn't normally happen, of course. During the feasibility and planning stage, issues such as loss of forest cover and impacts on wildlife should be considered in addition to engineering aspects. Now, a lot of times I have seen large scale projects, like for example irrigation department, they do a lot of large scale projects. They only look at the engineering aspects of the project, right? But they don't, especially irrigation projects, you have to look at these environmental aspects because a lot of these irrigation projects have a huge impact on forest areas, wildlife areas. So when at the design stage itself, they should see, is this reservoir that we are going to build inundate a whole forest area or a whole wildlife area? They don't look at those. So only when they come to the EIA stage, will they open their eyes and see whether there is an impact on a forest or a wildlife, or when only at the EIA stage when the CA calls up a meeting and the forest department and the wildlife department come to the meeting, then they'll say, we didn't know that there was a project like this even coming, and we don't like this reservoir coming within our sanctuary or our forest. So till then, they haven't thought about this issue. So these issues have to be looked at early in the planning stage. Because if you wait till the EIA stage, then your designs and your feasibility is already done, and at that stage it becomes very difficult for you to change that plan that you have done. But if you consult early with the forest department, now I said the 1.7 million hectares are controlled by the forest department and the wildlife department, no? So if you are doing a large scale project, most likely you will be impacting on a forest or a wildlife area. So it's always better to talk to the forest and wildlife department at the beginning of the planning stage rather than wait till the EIA stage when it's too late. Because at the beginning itself, you can talk to these agencies, and if there's any problem, you can solve it at that stage. There are many irrigation and water supply projects planned, especially in the north. These are very useful projects as they provide irrigation and drinking water to areas which were deprived of water in the past, right? So during the project planning and feasibility stage, it's very important for the engineering professionals to have close consultation and discussions with conservation agencies such as the Forest Department and Department of Wildlife Conservation in order to address the issues they may have. So this is what the message that I am giving is, especially for government agencies, talk to these agencies which might bring up problems late at a stage when it will be more difficult for you to change your plan. In many projects in Sri Lanka, agencies such as the Forest Department and Department of Wildlife Conservation get to know about the projects only at the EIA stage. This I am talking about, of course, government projects. This is too late in the project cycle, and many projects get delayed due to this reason. So you have to consult them early when you are designing the projects. Then of course I will talk a little bit about this pollution control. So one of the other areas that I was talking about EIA all this time, the other area that CEA is involved is in pollution control from industries. In addition, the CA is involved in the control of water pollution, air pollution, noise pollution and hazardous waste management. Now if you look at control of water pollution, one of the major impacts of industries on the environment is the discharge of wastewater, which can cause water pollution in water bodies such as rivers, lakes, lagoons as well as the ocean, because they are putting wastewater containing many chemicals, industries, right? So that can cause pollution of these water bodies. In order to control such pollution, the CEA has specified standards which are required to be met by industries when discharging their waste effluent. So in order to prevent this pollution, the CEA has gazetted certain standards which these industries are supposed to meet when they are discharging their wastewater into the environment, right? Say there's a rubber industry discharging their rubber waste into a river. You can't just simply discharge rubber waste into a river. You have to treat it up to a certain standard which has been specified by the CEA in order to prevent pollution of the water bodies. The CEA controls pollution arising from industry through the process of issuing an environmental protection license to industries. So CEA has a process where they issue a license every year to industries which are discharging waste. So the EPL issued to an industry will stipulate the standards and criteria to be met by the industry during its operation. So it will say in that license, this is the standard that you have to meet. If the industry violates any of the conditions in the EPL, the CA can file legal action against the industry. So the CA has regulatory powers where it can file legal action against the industry if they violate any of the standards that they are talking about. The standard stipulated by the CEA specifies the level of pollutants which are allowed to be discharged into the environment. So if you look at those standards given by the CEA, they will say you can only have so much of lead in the wastewater, or so much of mercury, or so much of cyanide. So they give the level that is allowed, and if you exceed that level, the CA can take legal action against the industry. For example, there is something called biological oxygen demand. How many of you have heard about BOD? Biological oxygen demand is something that measures the pollution load of a wastewater, right? So you can measure how polluting a wastewater is through this BOD. So the CEA will in their standard say you can only discharge the BOD level of 30 milligrams per liter when you are discharging wastewater into waterways. Right? So they are saying you have to have the pollution load at 30 milligrams per liter. So this is how CEA controls pollution from industries. In addition, chemicals such as mercury, chromium, lead, which are toxic heavy metals, are not allowed to be present in wastewater, as these heavy metals could lead to severe pollution and human health impact. Now we have heard about chromium, lead, mercury. These are called heavy metals, which are very toxic, right? And they accumulate in the body. Unlike other chemicals, they are excreted out of the body. But things like mercury and chromium, they keep building up in the body. So you will allow, the CEA standard will allow very, very low levels of mercury in the, like parts per billion levels of mercury in the wastewater, because it's so toxic. Even chromium, they will allow only very small quantities of wastewater, of chromium in the wastewater, because it's a very toxic chemical. These precautions have been taken in order to prevent situations such as the Minamata incident and Itai disease in Japan. I don't know whether you all have heard about it, but this was sometime back in Japan. After the war, when they were developing very fast, there was a place called Minamata Bay, where there were industries that were discharging wastewater into this Minamata Bay, and that industry was using mercury in the process. In their process, they were using mercury. And at that time, Japan didn't have any kind of environmental standards or regulations, right? And this industry used to just discharge their waste which contained mercury. And what happened was, in this bay there was a lot of fish. And mercury is a chemical that just builds up in the body. It doesn't go out of the body, but it keeps building up in the body. So this mercury that has been discharged by the industry kept building up in the fish. And then there was a lot of fishing community around this bay, and they were catching this fish and they were eating this fish. And finally what happened was, thousands of people got poisoned by mercury. And when you get poisoned by mercury, there's a very severe, it affects the brain and the central nervous system, right? And there were severely affected people through mercury poisoning in Japan. And even unborn babies, that is the second generation, the mothers who were exposed to mercury and their babies who were born later were affected by this mercury. And this company that was discharging mercury had to pay compensation to thousands of people, and they are still paying compensation because so many people suffered because of this mercury poisoning. Similarly, again in Japan, this Itai disease is something where it was poisoning through cadmium. Cadmium is also what we call a heavy metal, and in Japan this cadmium was accumulating in the rice. And what cadmium does is it makes your bones brittle and the bones break, and it's very painful. That is why it says Itai means like saying uyu, like it's hurting. So in Japan it says like it's like saying it's hurting, uyu api uyu can that's why it's called Itai disease. So a lot of people are suffering with this Itai disease due to cadmium poison. Now even in Sri Lanka, they think now there are hundreds of people suffering from kidney disease in the north central province and in Padavia and Anuradhapura and Polonnaru areas. Now they are suspecting, they don't know yet, but they suspect that it may be due to cadmium. But they haven't officially proven it, but they are suspecting that it may be cadmium poisoning that is causing this kidney disease. But they haven't come to a conclusion yet. So there are hundreds of people who have been suffering with this kidney disease. And it's very sad because there is no cure for it. They die at the end. And there are so many families without the person who is, they are farmers, most of them. And so it's a very serious situation actually, even in Sri Lanka, and they can't find what is causing it. So it's spreading all over now. And nobody knows. So you can see the problems from industrial pollution. You know, these chemicals come from industries or fertilizer, pesticides. It can come from any source. And these are the effects of poisoning. Now, for example, the coal power plant, it's releasing mercury into the air, and everybody is exposed to mercury. I mean, so like this, now you can see this Minamata disease was due to mercury poisoning. Though you say coal is the best source for power generation, look at all the mercury poisoning that is happening from there. Not only mercury, it is also emitting radioactive material. So how can you say that coal is the cheapest? You look at the environmental cost of that generating electricity from coal. They haven't added the cost. They are looking at the price of coal and the price of natural gas and saying, yeah, maybe I think natural gas is also coming very close to coal now. But they are just looking at the price of coal, the price of natural gas and saying coal is cheaper. But if you add all this cost of pollution from mercury, pollution from radioactive emissions, pollution from ash disposal, ash which a lot of people are being affected. If you add that health cost, definitely coal is not going to be the cheaper alternative for power generation. So now, I will stop here because if you all have any questions, you can ask from me now. Yeah.
That's on the power plant. The EIA is submit and is passed. So
yes, it was passed, but they also, now I forgot to tell you something about that. Now, Dorachole power plant, the EIA was passed by the Northwestern Provincial Council because they have their own, I forgot to mention that. In Sri Lanka, we have the Central Environmental Authority, which is in Colombo, and under the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, they have said environment is a devolved subject, right? So the provinces can have their own environmental authority under that 13th Amendment. So the Northwestern Provincial Council have their own environmental authority. So when this Norachole power plant came, the approval was given by the Northwestern Provincial Council, which is actually not correct because a big power plant like that, which can affect the whole country, the approval should have been given by the Central Environmental Authority and not the Northwestern Provincial Council. So there is an issue there. It was approved, yes. Any other questions or comments? Nothing.
Laboratory is in our country, but there are several coal powers and
in India.
In India, is it effectively our country now?
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. That's the problem. So just because of that, we don't have to have coal plants and add to it. That's the only thing.
So we can have the coal power plant here.
You can have, but what you are doing is you are adding to the problem of Indian pollution. We can have, no one is saying you can't have, but you are, okay, if there pollution, I don't know whether the pollution is actually coming from India. They haven't said anything like that. So far, they have not detected any pollution coming from India. There are very big coal plants, yes, in India, very big ones. So there is a possibility that it can come from India. So far, they have not detected it. So just because of that, if we add another coal plant into our country, we are adding to that pollution. And we are, this is our country. Of course, we can have coal plants or anything we want. But what I am saying is, why not have natural gas, which is not polluting at all, because natural gas contains only carbon and hydrogen, right? So only carbon dioxide and water vapor will come when you burn it. Whereas when you burn coal, you get sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, mercury, radioactive materials. All those things come out when you burn coal. So out of the two, which is better? Definitely natural gas. And now they are also saying that there is natural gas in Mena Bay. So if we also have natural gas in Sri Lanka, why not go for natural gas rather than bring dirty coal from other countries? We are importing it. Yeah.
We don't know how much time it will take to take the gas.
That is true. That is true. But there are you can buy natural gas. You don't have to. I mean, Bangladesh, Iran, all those countries have natural gas.
Bangladesh is, I think, most power plants are from the coal.
Yeah, maybe.
That's why the main issue. Most of the industries goes to Bangladesh because cheaper rate of
Electricity.
That's it.
That may be so. I don't know. My thing is, I mean, are we trying to follow Bangladesh or are we trying to have a higher standard than? I mean, why do you want to take examples like Bangladesh and India, which are not very environment? I mean, we don't have to. That's what I'm saying. Cheapest is not always the best. Do you want to destroy your whole environment just because you want to save some rupees? I don't know. That's not my way of looking at things.
But China
China
is coming to Sri Lanka just because of Sri Lanka is emitting lowest level of pollution.
Yes.
That's right.
So we shouldn't allow China to come actually. Why are we allowing them to come here to pollute? We shouldn't actually.
They have highways and
Huh? Huh?
they have money from the highways are built and being there so decent now they don't go. It's not.
That is true. I mean, it's very dangerous because they have very highly polluting industries, and they will bring all those and put those in Ambatottam place. So then people will realize what this pollution is right now. We don't have much pollution in Sri Lanka. I mean, look at even there. Now, if you go to China, it's highly polluted, no? Now they have realized it, and now they are trying to send their polluting industries to other countries because you can't even breathe in Beijing and all. If you go to New Delhi, you wipe your face at the end of in the evening, your finger becomes black because there's so much, particulate matter and dust, etc. So, are those examples to follow? I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, we should look at countries like Singapore or Japan. Or, I mean, those are. I mean, that we should think of making a country better rather than bring it down some more. That is what I think.
In Japan, they want to 3 months reservoir LNG, natural gas. They want to have 1 year Sri Lanka.
1 year Sri Lanka.
Yeah, in Sri Lanka. Because they want to have reservoir like 3 months. Something happens, newspaper from
Yeah.
they don't have a real thing.
Yes.
Therefore, they want to have resources somewhere outside.
Outside the country.
Outside the country.
They want to have it in Sri Lanka.
Yes, that was the mistake.
Why so far away?
No, but yeah.
Yeah.
And the eligibility minimum license scale is 2000 megawatts. Is that it's very costly?
Costly, yes.
Now, if you look at our total consumption at 2200 megawatts. Therefore, we have to remove everything and fix
Put LNG.
It is not possible.
But then in the future you will need more than 2000, no? I mean, you have to look at the future energy requirements also, no?
Yeah, no. 900 megawatts not has been our it has escaped. So by year or something, it is
Yeah.
once we put up and we cannot disturb and put LNG again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
When I answered this question in an exam, how do you expect the answers?
Which one? This one? Control of air pollution?
This for
The problem is I don't know what the questions they set. I am not the one who sets the questions. So I can't answer your question.
No,
I have never even seen the questions.
No, what he asking is now we have nobody we are in the section from environmental. So what kind of expectation you then
What kind of?
expectation answer how should the answer is and what is the expectation?
I don't know. I have no expectation because I don't see the question nor the answer. All my expectation is that you will think about the environment a little and you know a little bit about the environment. I don't know anything about the paper. So,
Engineers role regarding the environmental concern.
huh?
Engineers role.
Engineers' role in environmental protection, yes. So that is really, I mean, basically what you want is for you all to pay some attention to the environment. When you all are doing projects, when you all are planning projects, etc. Actually, I haven't seen these questions, so I really can't help you at all. I don't know what they ask.
I have few questions. I can only 3 sentences. One is Hambantota Harbour project has received much media publicity. In the
This is a question that they was asked?
Yes, sir.
Ah,
Ask a question.
really. Okay, let's see. Let's see what they have asked.
Hambantota Harbour project has received much media publicity in the recent past.
Ah.
Describe economics and social benefits of this project. Explain possible environmental or other concern if any. That's all.
So now those things are not covered in these lectures, no? I have never talked about Hambantota Harbour. So basically they are questioning you on general knowledge actually, which is very good I think, rather than just sitting here and listening to somebody's lecture and then going and answering that. I mean, this is our education system, no? Even university people, the lecturer comes and tells something, then you write down every word he says. Then you asked a question on that same thing and you write down again what the lecturer said. Here, at least they have done something different. They have asked you some general knowledge question, which is very good, I think. So in the harbour, I mean, did they ask about what is the environmental issue?
Yes, sir. They are describe economic
Yeah.
and social benefits
Yes.
of this project.
So that you can do, no? What are the environmental, I mean, social benefits of that? Economic.
Job creation.
Yes. And also now this Hambantota, the location, it's one of the best locations in the world for, it's a biggest shipping lane. Where 80% of all ships go to, 80% of all shipping goes through that area. So as far as location is concerned, it's one of the best. So if you properly develop the Hambantota Harbour, I think it's a very good thing. Economic and there will be huge benefits. Not by giving it to China, but anyway, I mean, right, but then we couldn't do it, no. So anyway, there are huge. Then the environmental issues are many. There are many environmental issues because they destroyed that whole Karagan Levai. That happened, no. Karagan Levai was completely with there were migratory birds, etc. That whole thing was destroyed when they did this harbour. So that's the answer. You can write more about it. Then what is the other question?
Global warming is a major concern of the survival of life on Earth. This is a topic that has received much attention on the world leaders, environmentalists, and social leaders. Explain what precautions the professional engineers should take in mitigating those adverse effects.
That of course global warming is caused by carbon dioxide emissions, no. So now this is one other thing. Now for example, coal and natural gas. If you look at coal, it emits huge amounts of carbon dioxide, whereas natural gas doesn't. Right? So as engineers, you have to look at those things. I mean, like you have to look at emission. But I don't think it's practical for Sri Lanka to be thinking of carbon dioxide emissions because we are a developing country, right? And we emit per person we emit very low levels of carbon dioxide. If you look at the world, if you look at the whole world, we are at the other end of our emissions are very low, right? If you take the United States or Germany or Singapore has the highest carbon footprint in the world. So that's not something to be proud about. No, we are always looking at Singapore now. We are saying we want to be like Singapore. Because Singapore has the highest carbon footprint in the world, right? So they are, they have a very high carbon footprint. That is, their emissions per person is very high. So that is not a model to follow. But of course, this thing about, I don't know whether engineers should be looking at carbon dioxide emissions, because we are too poor to be looking at trying to stop carbon, and we should be looking at stopping sulfur dioxide emissions, which are polluting. Because we are not rich enough to be looking at carbon dioxide emissions at the moment. Then what is the other question?
Other question, disposal of waste has become a menacing problem in many countries. The problem may have been aggravated by ignorance, indifference, lack of social awareness, as well as technical problem. Explain briefly 5 steps that you take to improve the situation.
So what should be the, what are the steps you would take? What are the steps you would take to improve the situation? Do you see, I mean, first thing is to educate the people, no? Because now our age people are too old to educate. I mean, first of all, you have to start teaching the younger generation. Our people are very, very bad at waste management. No, you eat a toffee or just throw it on the ground. We don't think more. So first thing is, I think, education. People have to be trained not to throw their waste here and there. If you go to the beach, look at that Bambalapitiya beach. It's disgusting. I mean, I can't believe the amount of waste that is there. And some people are cleaning the beach all the time. But why people shouldn't throw waste, no, when they go to the beach? It's really bad. So I would say first thing is to educate the people. Then like reuse, recycle, then waste separation. Then technology, of course, you have to have proper disposal sites, etc. Now they are doing a little bit of waste separation. No? People don't collect or they don't separate. So it has started a little, but I think environmental education is very important, especially for the younger generation. Yeah. So those are good questions they have asked. Not from what you teach, but from general knowledge kind of thing. It's good. Yeah.
Next question. A well-managed organic agriculture leads to more favorable conditions at all environmental levels. Organic agriculture counteract resources depletion, soil, water, energy, nutrients, contribute positively to the problems associated with climate change and soil degradation, and can help to maintain and enhance biodiversity in crop sector as well as plantation. Do you agree with the above discussed? Your answer given this.
So of course organic agriculture is where you don't use pesticides and fertilizers, etc. So naturally it's good for the environment, no? Because I mean when you use fertilizers and pesticides, you are killing a lot of, you are definitely decreasing the biodiversity, no? Biodiversity is, there are diverse, animals and microorganisms in the soil, etc. You are killing them all by using pesticides and fertilizer. So if you do organic fertilizer, you don't use those chemicals which kills all these animals and therefore reducing the biodiversity. And also it's much more healthier for us to eat that kind of food, no, without pesticides, and so it's always a positive thing, organic agriculture. So these are all actually general knowledge questions they have asked. You should know these things. You can't really teach as such. It's good that they are asking like that.
One interesting question. Discuss aspect of traditional style of living and practices that should be adopted to deal with the current problems of pollution, conservation of energy and resources, and physical well-being.
God. What about what did you say?
Discuss the aspect of traditional style of living
Traditional style of living.
and practices
Yeah.
that should be adopted to deal with current problems of pollution, conservation of energy and
Now, of course, traditional practice means now if you look at the older generations, right? The biggest problem with the new generations is they want more and more. It's like a consumer society, Like if you have a mobile phone, even if the mobile phone is working after 1 year, you want the latest mobile phone again. I mean, you throw away that other thing and buy another. Why? You don't need that, no? So it's a very consumer-oriented society. Now we have adopted that way of living, even in Sri Lanka. Whereas in the traditional way of living, you were quite satisfied. If you had your food, daily food, then shelter, etc. I mean, you were quite satisfied to live that life. You were not a very consumer-oriented person. No, it's a greed, really. Now it's greed that is driving people, which is why we are destroying the environment in the process, no? Because we want more and more things, more and more things. So we have adopted this Western kind of lifestyle. We have given up all our traditional lifestyle and adopted that kind of living. And by doing that, you are actually putting a big pressure on the natural resources. So that is why it was Gandhi who said, no, that the world is, this world is enough for us, for our needs, but not for our greed. If you now this kind of the way we are living now is greediness, right? We want more and more. So what Gandhi said is, if you are only living with what you really need, one planet is enough. But if you try to meet all your greed, you even 3 planets won't be enough, which is true actually. So this is what traditional living is. You live in harmony with the environment. So those questions really are more general knowledge questions. Not you can't be teaching in a class. So you all should have read all these things, and I can't in 1 hour, 2 hours put all these things into your head. But if you are a little bit more aware of the environment when you are doing your work, I think I'll be happy. That's all. Okay.
Do you think the Singapore Free Trade Agreement the environment of Sri Lanka?
I haven't really read that. I haven't read that agreement. But I saw in the newspaper that they are trying to bring in waste or something. No? They have said that. I don't know whether it's true or not. If they bring waste, of course, it's not a good thing. But actually, what they don't realize is they can't bring waste to Sri Lanka because they have signed an international convention called the Basel Convention. Basel Convention for hazardous waste, where you can't bring hazardous waste from developed countries to developing countries. And we have signed that convention. I don't know whether Singapore has signed it, but definitely we have signed it.
They might put the amendment.
I don't know those things. Yeah. That is true. In Sri Lanka, anything is possible.
Like Kigali amendment for Monte.
Yes, so they will do. Because if somebody gets a lot of money, they will do anything. That's the problem. Okay, then thank you.